So hello, everyone. You're all muted right now.
Excellent.
We will unmute you later, I promise. Some of you anyway. So welcome to our Chardonnay tasting. Charlotte is here and I'm Craig. And some of you I know have been before and some are new. That's cool. So we're doing Chardonnay today. I think we decided that Charlotte was going to go first and talk a little bit about Chardonnay in general and why she loves it, and then I'll do something else and then we'll taste. So I'm going to hand it over to Charlotte and just sit here and drink my wine for a bit.
Excellent. Thanks, Craig. I'm not sure if everyone can hear me. I don't know if you can see me or not because we're doing it in a little bit different format. Anyway, Chardonnay. So it's a white grape. And if you want to feel free to type in the chat box what you're drinking today, even if it's not Chardonnay, it's okay. I would say that we're not going to judge you. I will tell you, though, that I came up with a soundbite today that I'm going to post out later. And I did message one of my friends about it earlier because, so I'll mention that when it comes up. I thought it was quite funny and I had a good chuckle. So it started my morning off quite nicely. But Chardonnay, being a white grape, originally from France. And it was funny because even when it started coming into the New World, it wasn't really known as Chardonnay because the French have this great way of labeling bottles with things like Chablis, Bourgogne, Premier Cru, Beaujolais Blanc, Poulet Fusil, and all those great names. So it was really, sorry, I was reading the comment and I was like, what's going on? No. So it was really interesting. And I found that, you know, like once it started coming over into like the New World, and Chardonnay is so versatile. That's what you need to take from it. Because when I had corked wine bars, so many times I would have people say that they didn't like Chardonnay. And sometimes I would do wine flights and they'd be like, oh, you pick. And I would sneak in things like a Chablis or Petit Chablis or a Beaujolais Blanc. And then in the end, it would be, that's their favorite one. And I was like, that's kind of how I parent. I trick you. And then I'm like, yeah, that's Chardonnay. Because my little soundbite is when people say that they don't like Chardonnay, what I actually hear is that you don't like champagne. And so, yes, I judge you. That's like my one time when I judge you, because Chardonnay is so versatile, it's so malleable. It really depends on what the winemaker and the climate that it's growing in. And so it's like a red wine. So even for those people who say that they don't like white wine, Chardonnay is great in that respect because it goes through malolactic fermentation like red wines do. And it breaks it down into like that lactic acid, and in this case, it gets a little bit more diacetyl as well. So it gives you those creamy textures, that buttery notes. And then you can put oak in it, and the oak can be during fermentation or it can be after in the aging process. So it's super fun and very versatile, and everyone should love it or find the one that they love. But then it came this huge movement, and we got these like in the 80s and 90s, there was like super buttery and oaky, over oaked, over the top flavor profiles with the vanilla and the butter. And then it just became, people were like, oh, and it was mainly coming from like mass producing things. And so it was like people were ripping out native vines and planting Chardonnay vines because they wanted to make money quickly. And then it became this anti-movement, and it was known as the ABC, anything but Chardonnay. And so then this is where that came in, where everybody was like, I don't like Chardonnay, because they always associated it with those big, bold flavor profiles, and they were pretty much over it. So I find that that's like what makes Chardonnay is really interesting, because it has that vast history and that's associated with it. And you can make all these different styles of wine. And that's probably why I love it the most. And today I'm going to flip it back over to Craig, but I'm just going to show you what I'm drinking because it's easier for me to show it to you than type it in. And I'm drinking a Premier Cru from Valiant Chablis today.
Wow, fancy.
Does anybody have any questions for me? Do you want to talk more about terroir and how the flavor profiles, or do you want me to touch on anything else, Craig?
Oh, that's good. I'll do that. And
I'm watching the clock here, and I'm like,
I know. When we're tasting our wines, we'll talk about a lot of expand on those kind of things you were talking about. I'm actually drinking out of my little Chardonnay glass that my sister gave me. It has I'll put it up close. There's a little picture of the maestro, it says. So it says Chardonnay, I'm the leader, distinguished and complex, many notes and layers. So it's kind of cute. I've been busting a lot of glasses during the plague. So I'm down to my ones that have the thick rim. So yeah, Chardonnay is like you said, very versatile. Everything from champagne to unoaked, fruity peach bombs or ones that don't go through malolactic at all. So they stay really crisp and fruity so that you wouldn't even recognize them as Chardonnay a lot of times. So a lot of that variation is winemaker, but a lot is terroir. Like Charlotte will talk about her Chablis when she's tasting it, but that's the ultimate sort of extreme cold climate.
Sorry to interrupt, Craig.
Yeah.
There's somebody in the waiting room. I just got a message.
Okay, I'll let him in. The Chablis is kind of what we think about when we learn about wine as the extreme one, where it's quite a cool area. And I mean, I just saw a picture from Chablis yesterday or the day before that because of the cold frost, they had actually iced. What they do is they spray water on the vines. This year they had to do it. So it's a picture of all the vines covered in ice. It's completely gorgeous. But that actually insulates the vines for damage. It seems counterintuitive, but that's what they figured that out many years ago. And it's one of the most beautiful things if you're lucky to be there when the vines have been completely covered with ice. If you just Google that, you'll find that image. So yeah, you can go extreme from there to like the hottest parts of California and southern Italy and, the inland in Australia where they make these big round Chardonnays, and they do like to make them kind of buttery and oaky, although not as bad as what Charlotte was talking about in the 80s, 90s, the ABC thing. And that it's one thing that I was just going to comment on is that when I'm traveling to places, when I was in Australia and tasting, the most expensive top Chards, and when I'm tasting them in Canada at the National Wine Awards, the style has really changed now, and it's really been led by the premium ones to go to a less oaky, more of a mineral-driven, like French-style Chardonnays. So quite often with what we call a reductive character, which is something I have to have a wine that I can give you to taste that I know is reductive for you to really understand it. But it's kind of it's a bit of a sulfury thing where the wine is made reductive instead of oxidative. So it makes it nice and fruity and crisp and good acidity, but there's also this kind of a sulfury mineral note that sometimes you have to get past or let it age. So that extreme variation in styles, partly winemaker, partly terroir, and Canada makes great Chardonnays. I'm tasting a Canadian one. So yeah, if you want really good Chardonnay from premium to basic, you don't really have to leave Canada. And that includes even in Atlantic Canada, Nova Scotia. Blomidon makes some of the best Chardonnays I've had in the last while. Lightfoot and Wolfville.
They really do.
Yeah, really.
A couple of people are saying they can't see your video, Craig.
Oh, really? Probably my computer.
For me, it's just like a still shot.
Yeah, yours was doing that before too. I understand the internet is pretty busy for some reason.
Must be all those people at home.
Drinking wine, yeah. You keep freezing now. I need a new laptop. So do you want to go first on your wine?
Sure. So I picked Chablis today because I haven't left my home in quite a while. And so that's what I had. I was like very torn today about what I was going to pick. And I'd sent a couple bottle shots to a few people and I was like, I don't know. And I knew what Craig was using. So today I did go with a Premier Cru. And just to give you an idea on like Chablis being in that cooler area of France, you have the, in France, they use those terms Grand Cru and Premier Cru, and they mean different things depending on the region that you're in. But in terms of speaking in like Chablis and then Burgundy, it means that the Grand Cru is like your top vineyards, and then you have your Premier Cru, and then it goes to your villages, and then just like, you know, classic IGT wines. Can you taste the Premier Cru difference? Yes. Because I have had just regular Chablis, I find that Premier Cru have a little bit more richer note to it. If that answers your question, I think that came from Vasant because it just like disappeared off my screen here. But this particular one has a little bit riper, really citrus notes. It's not so much on that austere green apple side. This is a 2017, so it has a little bit of aging, but I mean, a Premier or even a Grand Cru, they can age between like 3 to 15 and more years. So it really depends on what you're looking for. And so I was hesitant to open it, but then I was like, but I want it. And I have a Premier Cru and Grand Cru at home. So you probably would be able to tell the difference. I don't know personally if you can tell the difference between a Premier and a Grand Cru. I'm sure you can, because people that study wine do it for that reason. They should be able to identify it down. This one in particular is from Lemblin Afi, because they're always end sun. I don't know if I can get that up close enough that you guys can see it. It's not one that's available in like New Brunswick liquor stores. It was a specialty order product. And I really like this one. I was expecting it to be a little bit more austere, but it's actually more on the medium side on the body. But it still has that nice acidity to it. But it's got like this really ripe citrus note, like kind of like almost like a baked lemon. I'm thinking about like lemon pie kind of thing. But it's not super fragrant. Like I have to like get my nose like right in my glass to smell it. It's kind of very muted, which is fine. There's also like some floral notes to it, and I'd call it like that berry I can't pronounce, and I was learning it today, acacia. It's kind of like got that fruit note to it. Really ripe.
Cool. Is my video visible now?
And I was like,
No?
it freezes for me.
Okay.
But this is like super, really acidic, but it's really balanced because those fruit notes stay, and at the very back, like on the finish, you get this steely note that goes through, like that minerality, which is typical from a Chablis that you would expect to see. I can't wait to have this with like some seafood pasta tonight. It's gonna be really good. That's what I would pair this with the cream sauce.
Say, try not to drink it all before dinner.
Yes, that is what I meant. I didn't see who typed that, but yes.
Yeah. It's an interesting, with your comment about can you tell Premier Cru from Grand Cru? I think it's just like, I've done there and did a tasting at Fev where we did every Grand Cru from the same vintage, and then some less, like some Premier Cru and some just regular Chablis. And my comment would be that just like you know how everybody's tastes are different. So there's going to be people who in a blind tasting would prefer the entry-level Chablis. And then there'll be people who prefer the Grand Cru. And there was a big difference between the different Premier Crus. Some were more citrusy, some were more herbal, I guess, depending on where they were. And of course, vintage to vintage. Like one vintage, the regular Chablis will be better than the Grand Cru from another vintage, for example. But the price won't change so much. So you got to, if you're on top of these things, you can get some good deals. So, shall I taste mine, Charlotte?
Yeah. Absolutely.
All right.
Now I do see some comments, and they were saying that we're freezing quite a bit.
Yeah, I think the internet is just crappy today. So this is my wine. I don't know if you can see it or not, but it's Mission Hill Reserve 2017 from Okanagan Valley. I'm going to try sharing a picture of the, instead of my face, the from one of the times I was there. We'll see if it works, and maybe that will just, so that's, if you can see that, that's just looking from the balcony of Mission Hill down the Okanagan Valley. There's a lot of great Chardonnay in the Okanagan and in Niagara, and like I said, a little bit in Nova Scotia, but the Okanagan has a perfect climate to make the big ripe style. So the Mission Hill Reserve is their upper level one. So I think
that looks like Quail's Gate.
Yeah, it is. It's rated basically by Quail's Gate. Yes, that picture. Yeah. So if you look, I mean, they're quite, one is just above the other, right? Mission Hill's just above Quail's Gate, up the hill kind of. So you're looking out over the vineyards to the water. There's definite style in BC, like the bigger style, but still fresh, bigger than Niagara generally, but fresh, you know, good acidity. And this reserve is, it's oaked, but it's not over the top oaky. And that's the kind of thing that I noticed all over the world. It's, you can definitely smell the oak, but it's not pounding you on the head. And it's not overly buttery. Sometimes what they do is they do what they call a partial mallow. And that's where you have, you don't allow malolactic fermentation to go all the way. And that leaves some of the malic acid. So that's that green apple acid, the fresh, crisp acid. And it won't make the wine quite as milky, buttery, creamy, whatever you want to call it. And I know that that's practiced at different wineries around the world, depending on vintage. But this one, I think, pretty easy to like Chardonnay, but would score high in a competition. But as I said before, some people would drink it and go, it's too big for me, or too much flavor. You know, it's a personal thing. Some people love those peachy unoaked ones, which I find boring, but hey, there's enough wine for all of us. So should we open it up there, Charlotte? Hear what some other people.
Sure. I did see a question that came in, and it was from someone that was asking, like, how do you find a good wine in New Brunswick? And oh yeah, because I was doing comments, I turned my video off, so you weren't looking at my nose. But how do you find good wine in New Brunswick and things like that? And how do you find good wine? It comes down to, what do you like? Are you looking for things to drink right now? Are you looking for things to keep for a few years? That's what it comes down to. So I always find it's hard to tell people, how do you find a good wine? Because what I think is a good wine might not be what you think is a good wine. So it comes down to that. So sorry, Vizan, I feel like that's a hard question, and Craig might have some opinions on it, because again, subjectively, good wines are good wines.
Do you mean a New Brunswick made wine, or just where do you find it in the wine at the ANBL? Those are very different answers.
I think he meant ANBL because he asked about the experience section.
I think the best way is to read my column. No, it's like Charlotte says, there's, well, that's one way to do it. That's how I got into wine, to be honest, not by reading my column, but when I was in my 20s in Hamilton, I subscribed to Billy's Best Bottles, because I looked at some of the wine reviewers and critics that were out there, and a lot of them they didn't speak to me, you know? So his was much more casual, and he would match. He drank a lot of Beaujolais too, so right away I knew he liked what I liked. And, you know, I found a wine writer that I liked, and he's the one who guided me through the LCBO in the early days, and I guess largely influenced my taste until I took the SOM program, and then I was influenced by my sommelier instructor. So I find most of the great wines that I've been introduced to in my life have been through people that I meet, and I find, oh, they like kind of what I like, and then I trust their opinion. And sometimes I stumble onto wines just by tasting everything under 25 in the store. And sometimes when I'm traveling, I discover them, but then I can't get them in New Brunswick anyway. But yeah, you got to find people whose opinions mesh with yours. Same with music or art or television or whatever, right?
And I find, like, in New Brunswick specifically, most of the larger stores have product advisors.
Yes.
And so if they recommend something to you and you like it, that's great. If they recommend something to you and you don't like it, it's kind of on you to then go back to them and say, that wine that you recommended, this is what I liked about it, or this is what I didn't like about it. Because then they can hone down on what you're looking for and then give you better recommendations. Because the first one that they recommend, it's kind of a shot in the dark, because they're like, I hope you like it. And they're going to go with something that might be more on the safe side versus pushing you outside of your comfort zone. And I find that in New Brunswick, the PAs that we do have are really educated. Like, that I think is one thing that I can say positively about ANBL, is that they invest in their people. So I like to know that. I like to have conversations with them to see what they like, what they think is new. But I'm also looking for, like, funky, interesting things. And I'm probably going to try it at least once if it fits in that price point where I'm going to go and buy.
There's a big difference from product advisor to product advisor, just like anybody. Because I taste with the St. John area ones every experience release. I taste all the wines with them. And, you know, there's a few of them I'm looking at them going like, they just are so away from me in terms of what they think wine is. You know, like they have done a lot of training.
Yes.
They've done a lot of training on paper and tasting, but none of them have been anywhere except for maybe one or two of them. And they haven't learned a lot of things, you know, but they're still 10 times better than what it used to be like at AMBF. But so you're right, Charlotte, you need to find the one their opinion syncs with yours. So I'm going to one here. So
I think someone's asking a question to you, Craig, about mallow, like partial mallow, and regarding like blending.
Yeah.
I see Steve.
Do they blend mallow with unmallowed, or do they arrest? That's a good techie question. I guess they can do both, but I would normally what they do is they stop the mallow by or sulfur. Does that answer your question? Yeah, it's mallow versus non-mallow is a big discussion point and argument you get in amongst winemakers and wine circles. It's interesting. It definitely has a strong effect on the personality of a wine. And there's also evidence that for people who suffer from wine headaches, that wines that go through malolactic fermentation are much more likely to give you wine headache because of the histamines. You get way more histamines created during malolactic fermentation. So you may find...
And so the partial mallow, you get like those, like malolactic fermentation in white wines, the process gives you those softer, creamier, like those cheesy, the yogurt, those type of flavors.
Yeah.
And if you're doing partial, then it's also creating, like, how did I want to say that? Like giving you a little bit more fuller bodied, but not necessarily. So if they stop it, they still want to keep some of that crispness, and they're trying something a little bit different. And then do they add oak to it? So, I mean, it really depends on the winery itself and how that they want to portray their wine, or what the style is that they're going for.
Yeah, I've definitely had wines that had no mallow and got all of the weight and texture from using old oak, for example. So keep if in an area where the acid of the grapes is going to be low due to temperature, you can pick early, or you can.
Craig, I think people are asking if folks could mute themselves because it's hard to hear. I'm getting a lot of background feedback. And if your microphone is on and there's noise in your background, then your picture flashes up on the screen. Like I see Natalie right now.
I can mute people, but.
Hi, girlfriend.
Well, we've got about 5 minutes left, so I just want to, I don't know, do we individually unmute people when we want to hear what wine they're tasting, or we just pick somebody and let them explain their wine?
Yeah, however you want to do it, because you have control over the mutes today. I don't.
Boy, oh boy, giving me control is a bad idea.
Oh, I see Helen. What are you drinking, Helen?
Yeah, let's let Helen. Is it Helen or Helen?
Helen.
Helen.
I have two sisters.
Oh, yes.
Chardonnay from Niagara-on-the-Lake.
Mm-hmm.
So
and
it seems. Yep. Sorry.
Okay, so Helen is part of one of my wine groups. So Helen, what are you tasting in that wine?
Well, I saved this for a special occasion because I bought this in the fall. It's 2017. So man, I really like it. There's a lot of descriptors that you suggested. So there's like a peach note to it. Definitely oak, but it's not over the top. It's still very fresh. There's a nice creamy, but not overwhelming. Yeah, that's all I gotta say.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
You're welcome.
And
It looks good.
awesome. Type up your notes and send them.
Okay, I will. Oh.
Is there anybody there drinking a Burgundy or a Chablis other than Charlotte? I think I saw.
Yes, I think somebody else is drinking Chablis.
Who was that?
Someone's drinking Quail's Gate.
Was it Stephen?
It is. Oh no, he was commenting on somebody drinking a Chablis.
Ah. Did I see?
There is a Henry of Pelham Spec Family Reserve.
Well, that should be somewhat similar to the one I'm drinking.
There's a California Butterfly Ridge Chardonnay on here. A Seven Falls from Washington.
Oh, that's interesting. Who's drinking that?
Oh, that's Stephen.
Stephen, can we
Stephen, do you want to weigh in on what you're tasting?
No, unmute him. I tried to unmute him.
Hey, can you hear me now?
Yep.
I can hear you.
So this is what I'm drinking, Seven Falls from Washington State. Just picked it up at AMBL today. It's something I usually buy when I'm in the United States, so I was surprised to see it here. I remember it in the United States about $12 a bottle. Here it's 26, so
yeah.
A little surprising, but it's a big wine. It's 14.5% alcohol. It's mango, pineapple, lots of oak, but it's really racy acidity too. So it's for being a big wine, it's quite well balanced. I'm surprised.
Nice.
It's interesting what you say about the.
And then I saw.
Tropical. Interesting.
I think Natalie's also drinking that wine as well. And then I see a Tom Gore on here as well.
Yeah, I remember that wine.
Does anyone, we have maybe 4 minutes left from what I see here as a countdown.
Charlotte, I actually just got a note from Zoom saying that our time we've been given a free extension for some reason. They're trying to get me to pay for premium, I think.
That's right.
But
That's right.
I still think we should end in 5 minutes or so. Anybody else there really want to talk about their wine?
I'm drinking a Quail's Gate,
Any
which is my
notes that
first
they're getting
Okanagan wine.
different?
Go ahead, Bassam. Yeah.
I would say it's aged in steel, not oak, and there's a little bit of malolactic fermentation, and then some lemony notes as well. So it's a good Chardonnay. For I think the $20 to $25 that I spent for it, it's not a bad wine. Like I'm pretty happy with it. And I've been to Chablis, and it's on par with a lot of the wines I had over there.
Awesome. And I think Natalie also wanted to talk about her wine.
I think I can unmute her myself, right? Yeah.
Yes, I can't do that.
Yeah, I just did, I think.
There we go. Trying to figure this out. This is the first time I ever do a Zoom. Can you guys
Thanks
hear
for joining
me?
us,
Yeah, we can see you. Yeah.
Ken.
Well, Charlotte, thanks for letting me know about these. These, I get every other Saturday off, so this would be a fun thing to do, especially where I am a product advisor at the TF NB liquor store, and all our tastings and everything have been canceled. So I don't recall ever having tried the Seven Falls myself. 2013 vintage. And the color on that was just really, really nice and dark on it. Kind of like a nice golden medium hue. What I was getting on it, I was getting a lot of the butterscotch and butteriness and a little bit of vanilla. It was definitely more in the autolytic characteristics on it. The fruit didn't jump out at me right away, but now that it's warming up to room temperature, I'm getting a little bit of yellow, ripe yellow apple and lemon on it. So it's actually nice. I like it. I'm a big Chardonnay fan, so I like trying different styles and different versions of different Chardonnays.
How do you find the public feels about Chardonnay these days that you see as an interface to the consumer?
It drives me nuts when I hear, I hate Chardonnay. And I'm like, you just haven't met your Chardonnay yet. That's all. Because then I go into the spiel of
You'll be able to use my soundbite later.
Well, it's just kind of like when I was doing my training for WSET level 3, like our instructor said, the Chardonnay is like the horror of the wine world. It sounds horrible to say it, but it's probably one of the most adaptable grapes that's available out there because it grows in any type of climate. You can do mallow to it, no mallow, oak, no oak. And you can go from very, very light to super heavy and buttery and intense. So that's why I love Chardonnay, because it's so fun and versatile and you can do a lot with it.
It's true.
Thanks, Natalie. Craig, there is one thing that we didn't touch on, autolytic. And so when Natalie mentioned that,
yeast is something that most consumers don't think about, and even a lot of wine tasters and writers don't touch on, but certainly yeast is super important from what Natalie was saying about where the winemaker decides to leave the wine on the lees after the initial fermentation, and to get some of that lees character, which that toasty bready note that you get in champagne, but they use it for dry table wines as well, like non-fizzy. So that's a really important aspect of yeast. But the other one I learned at a seminar when I lived in Hamilton from a vineyard where a whole bunch of winemakers made wine from the exact same grapes, but each used a different yeast. And the result was mind-bending. Like, you're tasting, these wines are all made exactly the same way. There were 7 or 8 different, all from the exact same grapes. And depending on the yeast, it went everywhere from that autolytic kind of lean, dry, yeasty, no fruitiness hardly, all the way to, citrusy, peachy, and then all the way to pineapple, mango. And it was nothing to do with terroir. It was
absolutely.
And when I went after that seminar, the whole terroir thing, was really became a thing. You know what? I need to learn a lot more about this, because it's not a lot of what you hear when you're touring or when you read back labels is BS, because winemakers can do an awful lot in the winery and in the vineyard to really create a wine that tastes the way they want it to taste. It's very interesting.
And how long of an extension did you get there, Craig, for the
I
Zoom?
said 40 minutes, but I think we're going to have to sign off in a couple of minutes here. So we got stuff to do, right? Like, I don't know.
Drink wine. Enjoy the sun, which finally came out.
Yes, it's actually quite nice. I think I'm going to go out on the deck and then finish not the bottle, the wine.
So the key takeaways here is that Chardonnay is awesome. It can be from austere, like green apple flavors to really heavily oaked, buttery, vanilla notes to it. So it depends on what you're looking for. And the key is to just like try them all and find the one or the style that you like.
Yeah, and in those styles, there's good and bad, right? Like there's big oak bombs that are annoyingly unbalanced, and then there's ones that are, hey, you know what? This is well made and everything's put together well. So you just need to taste more. What's that?
Sorry, someone commented and said no sun here where they were, and I know where they are, and I was like, oh.
All right, well,
I'm sorry you have no sun.
I'm going to sign off for this week, but I'm hoping we'll do this again next Saturday. Charlotte, if you're up for it.
I'm up for it. Well, next Saturday, is that Easter? I've lost track of days.
Maybe. Could be.
It's X of Y.
Easter wine. That's Pinot Noir, I think.
Oh, I have a great Pinot Noir I've been waiting to open. That's what we should decide right now. Pinot Noir.
Sounds good to me.
Vasant, did you hear that? Pinot Noir. And Justin, everybody say there's.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's committed. I will post it. Gamay works too.
Sounds good.
Excellent. Sounds great, folks. We'll be posting the event on Corked. And if you like what we're talking about, Craig's got a YouTube channel. He has a column in the paper on Fridays. Is it, Craig?
Supposed to be. This week it didn't run because I think they're running out of
Paper?
money. It's all being used for toilet paper.
And I have a YouTube channel. And then send us questions. Like if you're like buying something for supper because you're supporting a local business and you order takeout and you're like, what wine should I have with this tonight? Tell me what you got and I'll tell you what you should have with it.
Sounds like an app.
I know.
All right.
I'm working on it.
Take care, everyone. See ya.
Bye, guys.
Bye.